You're watching HFO-TV.
Please join me in welcoming Christopher. Thanks. So I have some slides that I hope are hopefully informative that talk about some of the major demographic changes that we see as we do downtown and corridor and transit-oriented development projects, both for a lot for public agencies where we're looking at long-term development potential, as well as for private development where we're looking at very short-term immediate things. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand what does the future hold and what are the implications for real estate. So the first thing is we look at demographic trends. And of course, it's very hard to project what the market might look like in 20 years. But luckily with demographics, the people who are going to be occupying buildings and space in 20 years are typically alive and born today. So we can look at the curves of the population and see where some of the trends are headed, because we can predict that fairly stably, with the exception of in-migration, which can sometimes throw a wrinkle into that process. But looking forward to the next 20 years, we have the baby boomers. It's gotten a lot of press. The first baby boomers started hitting age 65 retirement age just a couple years ago, and that's going to continue for the next 10 to 15 years, depending on where you define what the baby boomer generation is. But it's a huge demographic group, and as they enter the retirement years, that's a new life stage for them. They'll probably be moving, changing jobs, or retiring altogether. And so lots of change related to that. The other big group is Gen Y, and what we've outlined on the chart here is actually Gen Y and the next generation behind them, the millennials. Gen Y is actually a larger demographic group. There's more of them in the United States by about 5 or 10 million than baby boomers. They don't quite get as much notice, but they are also entering lifestyle changing periods of their lives as they graduate from college or leave high school and enter the housing markets or the job markets for the first times. And so you have those two groups that are both entering new lifestyle stages of life simultaneously. It's a pretty overwhelmingly large transformation on American society. In the middle, Gen X is a much smaller demographic group, and that has less of an impact on the housing markets, but at the same time, it also creates some interesting opportunities or challenges related to the market. If baby boomers are all going to downsize and move away from their large suburban homes, there's a much smaller demographic group to pick up those homes as they create families. And so it'll have some long-term implications on the shape of our cities. So the baby boomers, also called the silver tsunami, there's lots of other monikers you can give it. This chart's significant in that from 2010, there are roughly 40 million people age 65 or over. By 2050, that's going to more than double, just in raw numbers in the United States. So again, huge, not just population growth, but population growth in very specific sub-markets of our population. The group that we typically think of as most likely to be apartment renters, age 25 to 34, those are also highlighted in the middle of the chart. Those are annual new households to be created in those age brackets. That's as the Gen Y group starts entering into those years. It's going to create demand for a lot of new housing on an annual basis. And again, because we can fairly well predict how society is going to age, we can see that's going to be pretty stable for around the next 10 years. So a little bit about some of the preferences of what the boomer move-down market is looking for in terms of their lifestyle. One is they're not all retiring. Their retirement looks very different, either because of financial reasons, the retirement savings aren't as big as they used to be. Their 401ks got trashed in the recession, or people just don't like to retirement. It can be boring, and so they want to continue to work, just maybe more on their terms. Of course, people are living longer, staying more active, lock and leave, flexibility. Again, this speaks well to apartment and condominium products. And that one of the bigger shifts that we're seeing is that urban environments are much more desirable to this group than we expected. Walkability, proximity to services, the types of things that we find in a lot of the more inner neighborhoods are attractive to the baby boomer generation. Likewise, Generation Y, they want actually some of the very same characteristics in the type of places that they choose to live. They seek out quality over quantity typically, looking for urban environments. They're highly educated, the most educated generation in American history so far. A lot of diversity. They enjoy leisure. You know, we hear about Portland getting where young people come to retire. That's somewhat true in that they do like recreation and enjoying things, and they like freedom, and that translates to a higher demand and propensity for renting, not just out of financial reasons, but out of flexibility. They may be in Portland for a couple years out of college, but maybe in a few years they want to go to New York or San Francisco or chase that dream job overseas, and so they don't want to be tied down. And the choice of renting is truly a personal choice, a lifestyle choice, more than just a financial one. So some of the takeaways are, in the 50s, it was all about having your hot rod, souping it up. Nowadays, younger people want to spend their money and save it up for technology and socializing around technology more so than more traditional material goods. And from a lifestyle perspective, it's less of the suburban lifestyle and more of the we have here How I Met Your Mother. We have to update this now that the show has been discontinued. But really, it's social activity is really, really important, and neighborhoods and environments, places where they can live that can foster that, are the places where the younger generation wants to live, and I think that's clearly borne out in the apartment boom that we're seeing in the inner Portland neighborhoods. Part of that aspect is younger generation is driving a lot less than they used to. There's lots of statistics on this. This is just one piece of information that since the 80s to 2010, the percentage of 17-year-olds who have driver's licenses has dropped precipitously. And if you look at car ownership, there's very similar data as well. They're not only, obviously, if they don't have licenses, they're probably not owning cars, but they're going hand in hand, and it's an ongoing trend that we don't expect to reverse. I mentioned a little bit about the choice of Gen Y for renting out of flexibility, but there are financial reasons as well. They are heavily in debt. We read a lot about the impacts of college debt on society, and these are tremendously significant in terms of constraining their ability to become homeowners in the future. And of course, they've also seen their parents come out of the recession, perhaps with a lot of equity loss in their homes, and so they don't necessarily see that home ownership model as an important value, either financially or personally. Similarly, what are the kinds of places that people want to live? So there's a lot of bars on this chart, and I won't ask you to read them all. And this is actually a survey that the National Association of Realtors does, so more for ownership-built housing, but it's very translatable to apartments as well, which is what are the kinds of amenities and conditions that you want to see in your neighborhood or that there aren't enough of. And the ones that are in green are things about biking and walking to jobs and housing, public transportation, a mix of incomes, places to walk and exercise. Those are the desired elements of where people want to live, and I think it speaks to the kinds of places where we'll want to consider having apartments as well as ownership housing. So the bottom line is people are more and more, we're seeing, buying into the neighborhood first and the housing second. When you look at, I think it's particularly when you look at things like the micro-housing, 200 plus square foot units that seem almost bizarre that somebody would be happy living in that. It's not because it's the unit that's so important to them. It's the neighborhood that's important to them. It's the amenities, the outdoor opportunities, the opportunity for the coffee shop to do your work there, meet with your neighbors outside on the street rather than in a clubhouse as a part of your apartment project, and so on. That people are really willing to buy into those urban communities at any cost. And if all they can afford is 200 something square feet, they'll do it, and they'll over getting more square footage for less money in a neighborhood that doesn't quite have as many amenities. So the bottom line is, and you're going to see some statistics in one of the other presentations, is that urban places are growing in many places at a faster rate than more traditional suburban communities, and we're clearly seeing that here in Portland. So with that, I will hand it off to our next speaker and be able to answer some questions for you afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks for watching HFO TV. To learn more about HFO, call or visit our website.